When we first start managing anxiety, it can change our lives. We have these positive movement forward. Unfortunately, though, we also see how anxious we are. And it's almost like this Saul to Paul moment. Like scales fall off our eyes and we're suddenly keenly aware of anxiety everywhere. And in our excitement, we can make some terrible mistakes. Hello, friend. My name's Zach, and I'm an anxiety management coach. You know, in our excitement for these tools of managing anxiety, we can make 5 key mistakes that can harm us and those we're in relationships with. So let's talk about them today. Number 1 is perfection. In our joy of these anxiety management tools and the success we see with managing it, which you will see some success right away with putting some practical tools in place. But in that excitement, we can change the target to never being anxious again. Always catching it and managing it right out of the gate. It won't happen. And the more you lay that perfectionist down, actually the less anxious you'll be. Because for some of you, you might be like perfection might be one of your big rocks that make you anxious. And so these tools that start out good all of a sudden become anxiety inducing themselves because you're wanting to be perfect. But a key thing that helped me is when my coach told me, hey, Zach, perfection's not the goal. 10% better is. Could you imagine if this year you were 10% less anxious than you were the year before? And the next year, maybe be a little less anxious. Eventually it becomes a snowball, but you're still going to get anxious because here's the thing. Anxiety is a response that all humans have. There would be something wrong with you if you didn't get anxious. Now I might have just caused you to spiral because you can't remember the last time you were anxious. But trust me, you have anxiety. We all do. 10% better, not perfection. Number 2, that you're always trying to manage it. This is a trap I fell into, and I wasn't even aware of it for a while, was that I was constantly checking in with myself and using tools to manage my anxiety to a point where I was asking myself too often how I was doing. There's a problem with that. Sometimes we need to do stuff we don't want to do. And if I'm checking in, I'm going to be like, well, it makes me anxious to go run in the rain because I'm worried I'm going to get cold, right? That was literally me this morning. But actually, sometimes we need to shut off the part of managing anxiety. Sometimes you just need to perform. I own a restaurant, and in restaurants, it gets very anxious. In fact, I'm kind of addicted to that anxiousness that happens during a rush when you don't know if you're going to make it or not. Do you know what I'm not doing in those moments? I'm not trying to manage my anxiety. Because in those moments, anxiety is a good tool for me. See, anxiety focuses us on the problem. We become hyper diligent. In those moments that we need to be hyper diligent, we shouldn't try to be managing anxiety. If a bear is attacking you, please don't try to manage anxiety. Go into that fight, flight, or freeze and use it the way it was intended. Number 3, controlling others. If you've been in managing anxiety for any length of time, you've seen that it has positively changed your life. And you want others to be positively changed as well. But in that desire, we can start trying to control others. Make them stop being as anxious. It doesn't work that way. Merely in trying to control others, 2 things are going to happen. 1, you're going to become more anxious because you're trying to do something you weren't intended to do. Like, that's beyond your boundaries. Number 2, they're going to get anxious because you're trying to control them and they don't like it. Surprisingly, humans don't want to be controlled by other humans. I know, shocker. But in your good desire, use it in an improper way. We'll discuss some other things further in the video, but I just want to remind you, anxiety management is for you, not for them. It's for you to manage your own anxiety. And that can be the most helpful thing we can do when someone's anxious around us, is just managing our own. Number 4, needing to know the answer. Anxiety management is a simple process of noticing we're anxious, naming what it is we're anxious about. But here's the thing. Sometimes you aren't going to know the answer. And if you need to know the answer, it's going to just make you more anxious. Write it down, how you're feeling. Write down, what's going on in you at that moment and walk away. See, sometimes I have not realized for a week what I was anxious about earlier. It's taken me a long time to get there. In fact, as a Christian, I believe in the Bible, and there's a passage of Scripture that says that the heart is deceitful and wicked in all its ways. Who can understand their heart? Okay, just one thing I just want to point out right there is, who can understand the heart? Like, there's needs you have, there's desires going off, there's anxiety bubbling up that sometimes you can't understand. You need outside perspective. You need to give it some time. And if you need to know the answer right then, sometimes you can get trapped. Number 5, improper boundaries. We can struggle with this in 2 different areas. The first one is needing to be there for others. This is what's called a false need. We don't need to be there for others. It's a good desire that runs rampant, and we can get anxious about it. It can be a mistake that we make with our anxiety. See, years ago I was a pastor at a church, and some people were relying on me that were on staff, I felt like, and I felt like they needed me. And I got really anxious when I thought about resigning, even though I knew that God was calling me to resign. Luckily, I had a mentor of mine tell me, Zach, follow God and instruct them to do the same. See, sometimes we can think people need something that wasn't ours to give, and that's where it's an improper boundaries. Similarly, the second one is needing others to like us. See, we can struggle with this anxiety management stuff that we need people to like us. And one of the ways that I get people to like me is by giving them tools, giving them gifts, giving them good things in an improper way. See, this is kind of like Darth Vader here, right? You're learning these tools and tricks and tips that honestly can get a little scary when you start to look at the kind of power you can have if you're using them improperly. Key tip that's not a point, don't be Darth Vader. Don't try to yield these things for your benefit to others' detriment. And I think that's what we do when we need to be there for others or we need to be liked. We change something that should be a good and beautiful gift, being there for others, into my glory, my purpose. Same thing with needing to be liked. We can do these acts of service that aren't really acts of service. They're trying to get someone to like us. And this is how anxiety management can go awry. So there are proper ways to manage anxiety that aren't doing these mistakes. And if you want to know what those are, watch this video right here. I know it'll really help you.